Good afternoon. It's just after 4 o'clock and this is the Corporate Parenting Subcommittee meeting. Item 1 on the agenda is the notification of the Chair and Vice Chair for 2022, 2023 to 2024. The subcommittee is invited to note the appointment of Councillor Anna Bradnam as the Chair of the Corporate Parenting Subcommittee and Councillor Michael Atkins as Vice Chair for the municipal year 2023-24. These appointments were made by the Children and Young People Committee on the 27th of June 2023.
Thank you, Rashenda. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the Corporate Parenting Subcommittee on Wednesday, the 12th of July. The Council allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures or share on social media during the meeting. However, can I ask that you turn off your mobile phone or to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting's taking place? There's no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I'll adjourn the meeting and we'll all leave the building through the side doors and use the external fire escape to the car park. If the meeting lasts more than 2 hours, we'll adjourn for a short comfort break. But before we begin, I'd like to welcome Brian Relf, who is the Interim Service Director for Fostering Regional Adoption and Specialist Young People Services. And we're also, welcome Brian, we're also joined by Tracy Stevenson. Would you like to say hello and turn on your microphone, then we'll see you.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you. Hopefully that's gone over. And Tracy is the chair of the Cambridgeshire Foster Carers Association. She attends today as an observer. And Tracy is welcome to take part in the debate on all of the reports on today's agenda, but has no voting rights. Okay, so item 2 is apologies for absence and any disclosable pecuniary interests or non-statutory disclosable. Are there any? Sorry, I'm reading 2 things at once. Item 2 is the apologies for absence and declarations of interest. Are there any apologies to report, Rashenda?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Atkins, who is substituted by Councillor Slatter, and from Councillor Hay.
Thank you very much. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? No. Okay, thank you. Item 3 is the minutes of the meeting on the 29th of March 2023 and the minutes action log. Are members happy to approve the minutes as an accurate record? That's me. And Philippa wouldn't have seen them, and I've seen them and read through them, so I think they're fine. I will just sign those. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any minutes on the minutes action log, which is on pages 7 onwards of our agenda pack? Are there any questions? No. Right. I didn't have any questions, but no, that's fine. I was very happy with all the work that's being done. So, item 4 is petitions and public questions, but none have been received this month, so we'll move on from that. Item 5 is the participation report, and we're joined happily by Shalina Shandhu, the Quality Assurance Lead for Participation and Independent Visiting, and Robin Foster. Thank you. So we look forward to hearing an overview from you, Shalina. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So you will have all received the report already, and I would like to just take you through some highlights. So first, if I can refer you to 2.3 of the participation update, just to note that the joint summer programme has been published. It's been shared with carers, and we've had quite a few bookings already. And Children and Young People told us that they would like additional activities this year in relation to the art exhibition. As you know, that's normally a virtual event. They'd like it to be face-to-face this year, and they asked for some additional workshops, art workshops for this. So the participation team has created 3 separate workshops over the summer with a view to creating art pieces that would be at the art exhibition, as well as perhaps, if young people want to, donate it to supervised contact centres. If I can refer you to 2.7, the young people from Peterborough and Cambridgeshire worked together, the Children Care Councils, on a mental health project. The final product was a spoken word poem, which they wrote themselves and presented themselves, an animated video, which they provided feedback and guidance to the animators on. You should all have received the link just earlier this week or today. And if you have any feedback on that, we'd love to take it back to the young people who were involved in that project. If I take you to 2.10, our young trainers who you know do foster carer training and have done so for more than a year now, recently started working with our student social workers. So they amended their training with my colleague Robin leading on this, and facilitated training for student social workers, very well received. As you know, training from young people is so powerful, and we had a lot of excellent feedback from the social workers as a result. 2.12 just takes you through the Every Word Matters project. So as you know, we've been looking at language used around young people and what young people prefer. And their first project, or the first outcome of that, will be a video called Every Word Matters. And that should be able to be published within the next month. We've had the first draft. We're just taking feedback back to the animators, and we're hoping to be able to publish within a month. So those are my updates, Chair, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Shalina. As always, lots of interest going on, and I'm so pleased to hear that the young people want to do more towards the art project, because that was fantastic last year. And also, I'm pleased that you've linked up with the Care Leaver Forum. We had a Care Leaver Summit earlier on this month, and that over in Peterborough, and that was really useful. It was looking at so many things to do with how to smooth transition. Does anybody have a question for participation report? So, Councillor Slatter?
It's more a matter of just welcoming everything you're doing. Thank you, Shalina, and your very crisp presentation, which obviously didn't give me time to remember what I wanted to think about, to say about it. But so it is very, very important with the work you're doing and making such progress as well, which is good. I think a lot of the general public are more aware now of how early trauma it stays with people, but you can help and you can adapt, and the more understanding we all have, the better. I know that there's been talk now of the Social Worker Academy. Yes, I'm waiting for the nods from down the end there. And this, I'm sure that that's where some of these young trainers, if they're not already students there, then their successors will be training them, and maybe both will happen. So a warm welcome, and thank you very much to you and Robin for what you're doing for our young people. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Councillor Bulat.
Thank you. I just want to welcome the report as well. And I was really interested in the Every Word Matters project, because even within this committee, we made changes on how we refer, for example, to homes. And I'll be really curious after the video is ready, like what changes we also need to think about and reflect as members and in our conversations in council, like what other words should be adapted perhaps to what young people would like to see. So in addition to the video, to be interesting to see if there are any recommendations specifically for this committee or the wider council conversations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, and I remember we were talking through words with the children when we young people at one of the earlier meetings. And interesting, I saw that change had already been was embedded in the scorecard, so I was pleased with that. Okay, thank you very much indeed. We're asked to note the contents of report and raise any queries, but I don't think we've got any questions, but thank you very much indeed for everything that you're doing, because it really enriches the lives of our young people and gives them experiences that they wouldn't have otherwise. So thank you very much indeed. So item 6 on the agenda is our regular report from the Cambridgeshire Foster Carers Association and the Fostering Service. And Anita Hewson, the head of service, will introduce the report, and is joined, well, I'll ask also Tracy Stevenson, the chair of the Cambridgeshire Foster Carers Association, to contribute once Anita's done the presentation. So thank you, Anita. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I can hear myself now. Thank you very much, Chair, for that introduction. And I'm very much here with Tracy Stevenson, who is the chair of the Fostering Association today. We have prepared this report jointly, specifically for this meeting today, just really giving an overview of our collaboration and how we're working together, and give you an overview of not only the fostering activity, but also some of the things that we have been progressing since we last met. I think it's really important to start with that I think that to share that the fostering service and our association got a very good relationship. We've got a very open and transparent relationship. We meet on a regular basis, be that with the head of service, myself, or with service managers, team managers, and other people as appropriate. Some of the activity that we have been working on is very much about improving our services for our children in care. We also looking forward to reflecting on the current working groups that we have. We have a number of working groups in terms of progressing and developing our service. We have recruitment ambassadors working group, our retention working group, and our mentoring working group, which are all working together, not only to recruit foster carers, but also to retain foster carers. Within the work that we're doing with our working groups and with the association, we've identified some areas that we would like to do some work on going forward. And specifically, and it's quite timely in terms of where we are in the year, the association have identified that they'd like to see changes to how we provide end of year financial annual statements. And we proactively had a meeting only yesterday with our new finance coordinator to ensure that we can progress that for next year, which is really, really good. We're also looking to ensure how we can promote the needs of the birth children of our foster carers and our foster families. Historically, we've had a support group, and that's something that we want to explore a little bit further. So pre-COVID, things were quite different. And we as a service are kind of reflecting on what we had previously and thinking about how young people would like to engage with us and how the fostering household would like to engage with us. So that is one of our priority actions as well. Retention of foster carers is really, really important to us. And it's something we are very, very conscious of. And when we go on and move on and look at our annual report going forward, it's a very difficult time in terms of the country, in terms of recovery from post-COVID, in terms of the cost of living. So it's something that we are very, very much aware that we need to be promoting and working very closely with our fostering community. So we do know that money issues is an issue in terms of, like I say, the cost of living. And sometimes we acknowledge that for foster carers, it's difficult to talk to us. So we are very aware of that, and we are putting in place systems to enable that to be business as usual conversations. And I know Tracy at some point at the end of this will want to maybe say a little bit more and expand on that. It's very important that, you know, if any foster carer raises any concerns, that we attend to that straight away. And we have got embedded in our practice now systems that enable us to do that. And I think that has been a significant change that we've seen over the last year, and we can evidence in terms of our retention of foster carers. We have some very really, really good progress in terms of our recruitment and in terms of our ambassadors, who we've got some fantastic ambassadors who are foster carers who go out into the community, be that John Lewis, be that Tesco's, be that standing, you know, in different communities like Wisbech, and also supporting us with some of our social media activity in terms of getting our message wider. They're very, very proactive. And what we're realising and what they have highlighted to us, actually bringing the retention and recruitment function together would be much more beneficial. So that's something that we are working on this year. And we will be putting on many more activities in terms of retention, but also recruitment. We will see the activity together. And we'll be putting on things like picnics in the park, as well as more virtual events. But also we're looking at changing some of the ways in terms of recruitment and how our foster carers support us. So we would have monthly information sessions. We're now going to change that, say, come and meet our foster carers, come and talk to a foster carer, actually hear what it is actually like, what's my lived experience. So again, that's something going forward. Also thinking about our newly approved foster carers, and also foster carers who need some support, making sure that we've got the support available to them through our mentoring scheme. And that is something that we have grown this year. That feels very embedded, and it is very well received as well. We have a good feedback loop with our foster carers. Our fostering association hosts a Facebook page. And also, like I say, there is open access to myself as head of service and to any of the managers in the service. We take feedback very seriously, and we do promote people accessing that. We are about to step into a period of transformation as a service. It's very early days to report anything at this stage, but we do understand and we do realise that going forward, that we do need to look at how we compare to the open market, be that an independent agency, be that our neighbouring local authority. We're looking how we can meet the needs of our children differently and make sure that we support and train our foster carers. So that's very much on the agenda going forward for next year. And that's something that the next step very much is looking at how we make sure that our foster carers and our children in care are brought into that transformation programme as well.
Thank you very much, Anita. I think I'm going to ask Tracy if there's anything you'd like to add, and then we'll move on to questions.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that we have worked hard to build a very good, positive relationship with fostering service. We do have the regular meetings, as Anita said. They're very productive. I have no problems in raising things that are raised with me through the levels that I need to, and go to Anita, and have gone to Anita where need be. And it is working very well. There are a few issues for foster carers, as always there will be. The main one at the moment is the cost of living crisis, and the government put out a guidance back in April for the national minimum standards of an increase to their previous amounts of 12.43%. We're still waiting for that to come through from the local authority. We understand that these things can't happen quickly, but that was April. It happens every April. It's now July. So they are waiting eagerly to hear what they are going to be, those increases are. There are a lot of foster carers that are struggling financially. Many foster carers have to work now, and that has an impact on the children and young people, because the foster carer isn't there perhaps when the school phones to say that the child has been suspended or needs to come home from school for whatever reason. So it does have an impact. I know it has an impact on everybody, but we're trying to do our best for these children, and it helps if we can afford to do it properly.
Yes, thank you very much, Tracy. And I know how much you care about that. So I'm going to turn to Brian Ralph, if he has a first comment on that.
Okay, okay. I just wanted to start off by saying I do want to apologise to you, Tracy, for that for the delay in a decision on that, because I do recognise it comes around every April. So I do want to apologise to you and the other foster carers about the delay there. Since coming into post, I've got a paper which I'm going to be discussing with Martin and with John Gregg as the two executive directors, because we're a joint service, with a proposal to look at the kind of the financial uplift for this year. So I will make a promise that with this will be resolved before the end of the month. Okay. Any payments, of course, will be backdated to the 1st of April.
Yes, one of the things I'm very mindful of is that the children that our foster carers are looking after are often traumatized, partly sometimes through neglect and not having had stuff and really essential things. And so I'm very mindful that often our foster carers will supply those things because they know that that's important, that children have them. And yet we shouldn't have our foster carers subsidizing our children in that way. You know, they're often taking that money from themselves in order to supply for the children, and that's not appropriate. And we need to make sure that we are funding our foster carers appropriately and at the right time. But thank you, Brian. I'm going to hold you to it will be ready by the end of the month. Just one moment. Yeah, thank you. Right. So, Councillor Slatter.
Put my hand up, yeah, mind reader. But well, it's thank you very much, Tracy, on everybody's behalf, and you as a representative of all your foster carer colleagues. I'm sorry that it's becoming a struggle, because clearly these are children who need a responsive parent more than most. It does seem to me that there is a wind of change in terms of appreciation of caring, you know, in the public as a whole, but also among the movers and shakers. There are people who are quite high up in the NHS acknowledging that training carers may be more important than training doctors, and to see it as a career to be developed. Now, I know that doesn't work quite so well in terms of therapeutic parenting and foster carers, because you are taking people into your own home and it's not like going out to work. But I think if there is any sort of spin-off that appreciation is followed through to it not being out of, you know, you're not out of pocket, and you're not the one who's giving not only of yourself, but also of your time and property, then more than you should, then we must try and get that balance right. And meanwhile, I'm glad that things are going well. And I don't know whether you are an ambassador too. No, you're not. Well, maybe my question was really for Mr. Hewson, actually. May I carry on with that? Thank you. I would love to see an ambassador at work. Just to be able to hear some of the answers to some of the questions. So it's interesting to know what the questions are and the problems are. And you may well have people coming back saying, well, I started looking into it, but it wasn't okay. But now I see you do it, you know, and you're different, and you're not married, or you've got children, all the sort of things that people think might be in the way. If it's possible to let councillors know when such events are happening, you know, if they're being public events in the Grafton Centre, as you say, that would be very welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Boulat.
Thank you, Chair. On recruitment and retention, I think that's really like the core issue that we need to discuss. I think you already touched on this question in the reports. Like a key question for me is like just how good our offer for in-house foster carers is compared to private agencies. I think that's like a really crucial question. And I guess my follow-up question from that is are there any ways in which we can improve this offer realistically? Are there any other lessons we can take from similar local authorities? Perhaps I know some councils have the council tax rebate, for example, and there are other possible ways to improve our in-house foster care offer. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to respond to that, Anita? Yes.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, we're just entering into a period of transformation, and that's very much part of one of our pillars of exploration. So we have explored our neighbouring local authorities, in terms of what their allowances are, but also in terms of their value added support service. So exactly like you say, in terms of council tax reductions, sometimes it's zero, not saying in our local authorities, but nationally. There are things like accessing loans, zero interest loans, thinking about for cars that foster carers potentially will need. Also around, you know, thinking about the allowances, how we actually map ourselves in terms of, we currently have a skills level, so we can offer a maintenance payment that covers the needs of the children, and then there's an element on top of that which is around the experience of our foster carers, and we're looking at whether that is the right model currently. So I think going forward, we are currently proactively looking at everything, as well as the external market as well, because we're working with commissioning in terms of understanding what the market is, which independent fostering agencies are local to us, but also those that are national, because currently, as you know, that some of our children are going further than our boundaries.
Thank you. Certainly, I'm glad to hear there's a piece of work going on looking at our benchmarking us compared to other councils, because we know, don't we, that it costs 10 times more to recruit than it does to retain. And we really need to make sure that the offer that we're giving to our foster carers does actually match what they're having to spend. And as we know, we've often said in the past that I don't know if this is still the case, but I know we said in the past that there was an expectation that foster carers would not be working in order that they'd be available for children. I think now they can, can't they? But even so, that we need to make sure that the remuneration that we're giving our foster carers is adequate for what they are doing and the value that they're giving us. But similarly, we need to be retaining those carers wherever we can. I know foster care tends to fall to an older demographic, partly because that's, you know, they're the people who maybe have the time and the space to foster, but we need to be able to recruit more to fill that gap, but also keep the ones that we have. So I just wanted to, Tracy, did you want to say anything further on that?
Yeah, if that's okay, Chair. There is work ongoing. I've done some bits and pieces for Anita as far as suggestions that things that people have come to me about, that isn't just about the amount of money that people get paid. Whilst that is very important, foster carers do not foster for money. It is not what people get into it for. And support is important. Having support when they need it is the key thing for support. But as far as the finances go, I have my own views on what will and won't work. But I think the work that's happening is very good work. There's other things that can be offered that aren't just the money at the end of the pay period or whatever. Things like respite, as I say, support, access to other things, access to different things that can help the children that we look after. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that materialises and what we can offer foster carers. As you say, it's far better to retain than to recruit. So we want to keep our foster carers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Brown Ralph.
Thank you very much, Chair, for that. I just wanted to respond by that to say, I think we're at a great opportunity here for fostering. We've got a new service team, a new management group for the authority. I think fostering has got to be at the heart of what we do. Essentially, if you look at the outcomes for children, a stable, loving and open home will produce the best outcome for a child. So we need to be a fostering oriented organisation. I like to say in my authorities that we should become Cambridge's fostering family. We need to see it as a family approach, and we need to support our foster carers to feel included. The transformation project, which we're now getting underway, is a great opportunity to look at the key pillars. And what we need to have is, I totally agree with you. People don't get into fostering. You don't share your home with a person because you're getting financial reward. You share your home with the person because you're motivated to do something positive for your community and for that child. But as it says, you don't live on bread alone, but it certainly helps. So we've got to have good rates and good remuneration packages. And we're in a market, and we have to be conscious as a council that we're in a very commercial market, and we need to be competitive against our commercial competitors. Otherwise, they will attract people. So that's one aspect to it. The second aspect to it, as you rightly said, Tracy, is that we've got to give carers excellent training and excellent support. So it's good rates, excellent support, excellent training. The third thing is, which you said really quite strongly, is you've got to wrap around support. So you've got to give practical assistance. You've got to be able to meet needs and demands such as respite, such as even sort of things like sort of daycare, Saturday morning kind of stuff. You know, if you've got a problem as a foster carer, who do you turn to help you in that? And we need to become more reflexive and open about how we do those models. We need to get that underway, and that's all part of the transformation. And finally, I think what we need to also look at is how we mobilize a whole council approach to supporting fostering, how we become we should be a foster friendly local authority. So I'll make a little plug for that we should be a foster friendly local authority. I totally endorse the idea that we need to support issues concerning council tax, and we need to see fostering as really one of those great delivery models for children, because essentially our role in corporate parenting is to deliver children to a happier future. And we can only do that if we've got supported and happy foster carers.
Right. Just one other thing that occurs to me, and in a brief conversation with Tracy before this meeting, what came up was that very often children have a crisis for whatever reason on a Friday afternoon because they either, for whatever reason, they don't want to go home, or there's a problem, or they're frightened. And so it means that there's a crisis on a Friday afternoon and evening because children are having a worry about, or a real serious concern about the weekend. And so I just wondered if we need to take any practical steps to boost our support at that time. I don't know how that would work, but just to make sure we do have people available so that if things happen, and in fact, quite separately, you mentioned this, Tracy, but also I had another call from another foster carer with a crisis on a Friday afternoon, a child not wanting to go home from school. So I appreciate that's often a time when officers want to be off home and starting their own weekends, but we definitely need some kind of contact mechanism at that time so that children can be supported. So Tracy, over to you.
We do have out of hours social workers that we can call. There is a duty desk that we can call, but often the people that can make decisions, they're the ones that are difficult to get hold of at that time. So I just want to reiterate that there is support. It's just not always the right support or the appropriate support, and some things do have to get left to the working week, because that's the nature of the beast. But can I just come back to one thing about the transformation project? I've heard quite a lot about the transformation project, and I've heard a lot about how it's to help with fostering and foster children. I'm not aware of any foster carers involved in that transformation project. So I would like to raise that as a potential issue, and I'm happy to be involved, but I'm sure there are other foster carers happy to be involved. But if it's about fostering and foster children, then why aren't foster carers involved? Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Anita, do you want to respond to that?
You're absolutely right, Tracy. And I think I said just when I was going through my report, we're at the very, very early stages where we're planning and we're starting to gather information. And absolutely, yourselves and children in care, we need to make sure that that's the next step. We've kind of gathered our gathered our troops in some ways in terms of, okay, let's plan what we need to do, and that the next step is, okay, now we need to progress that plan, and that very much is part of bringing you on board as well. Absolutely. Can I just also respond to kind of that Friday night thing? Yeah, I mean, that's social work in terms of how we kind of respond and expect things. We do need to work with our other stakeholders in terms of schools and what have you, so things don't just suddenly happen on a Friday. We do have, exactly like Tracy said, we've got an emergency duty team. There's a head of service on call 24/7 in terms of hours. The fostering service also have an out of hours service, and we also do have a wraparound support, placement stability support service, which we are developing further. Currently, we are about to hopefully go out to advert for more posts, and I know that that service has been to some of the support groups, and it is about understanding what foster carers want from that service as well. We're very clear about that. We need to maybe look at that a little bit more, because for some of the feedback from what foster carers want, is it in terms of supporting the child, supporting, is it about training in terms of foster carers' needs? And we just need to make sure that we fully understand what the foster carers' views are on that as well.
Thank you very much, Anita. Did you want to say anything, Brian?
No, just endorse what Anita has said, and said, we're very much wanting to work in partnership with you. I do stress that unfortunately at the moment the transformation project is just at its information gathering stage. So what we would, as Anita's saying, we want to get some of the information together so we can then share it with people and then say, what do you think will work best for us? What do we want to go here, rather than as kind of sitting in the room going, what shall we do?
So you'll be engaging with the foster
So we'll
carers
definitely-
associations in due course. Good.
Yeah,
Excellent. There you are, Tracy. You got your in. Be careful what you wish for. Okay, thank you. And Councillor Slatter.
I'd like to come back to something that Mr. Ralph said. Sorry, how do you say your vowel? It is Ralph, right? The word transformation gets used a lot. Are we just talking about making improvements, or having a good go at looking at a list of things that Tracy's been saying for a long time? Transformation sort of suggested it was all wrong then and now it's going to be all right. Why do you use the word transformation when some of these things are already being, the problems are being dealt with already clearly between Anita and Tracy? I'm not sure, do we need the word transformation? Is this not just making things better?
Before you answer that, I would like to know, is the transformation simply the separation of the services between Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, or are we doing something else as well?
Well, the short answer is that I inherit the word transformation. So we were on a transformation journey before I got here. So I think we can look at it in terms of saying, I think you're quite right in the sense of, I'm going to take the analogy, and I'm a guy who likes analogies, is that, if we're talking about a proper transformation, is a chrysalis to a butterfly is a proper transformation. That's a proper transformation. So I think at the moment, I like to challenge authorities. We have to think harder. Currently, we are I would say, on a tipping point when it comes to national fostering. For the first year, the IFAs themselves failed to recruit enough lost people to cover their own losses. So that's commercial companies, smaller, highly individualized, couldn't attract enough foster carers. We're in a demographic situation whereby the younger generation, because you need at least to have a spare bedroom, if not two. So 3 and 4 bedroom houses are getting more and more expensive. That's pushing the demographic away from what we can do creatively with fostering. Also, the big push factor is that we've had 2 years of pandemic, and the frank truth is that the children entering the care system are more traumatized, have higher levels of challenge, are less socialized. So you put all those together, standing still is no longer an option. And to an extent, some of the models we had in the 1970s for fostering and 1980s, which we've just kept doing, were great, but they won't get us where we need to be in the 21st century. And there are some real key challenges within that. We've got to look at actually, it takes a person having, you know, a really challenging child will take somebody giving it their full-time attention. It's not something that somebody can go out to work and then come back in the evening and then just look after the child and everything's hunky-dory. That's not the kid that we've got. So we're having to then start looking at saying, well, how do we make fostering for the 21st century something that a family could reasonably take on, which will give them enough income to cover their overheads and enough time to cover the child. And I think that does actually mean that we have to look at how do we transform these services, because we're expecting people in the community to deal with much higher levels of challenge, much higher levels of anger and frustration. And we're going to have to develop a service that can actually cope with that, because otherwise we will see fewer and fewer people coming into fostering and fewer homes, and we'll be pushed in the direction of residential care. So I do see it as transformation literally, because I think the option is transform or the service will start to wither. And that's where we're at.
And one of the other problems we're aware of is that the demographic of our foster carers, with of course the exception of Tracy, is older. And that's not, forgive me for being flippant, I was trying to be polite. What I mean is that a lot of our foster carers are older, and many of them have retired. And we've seen in another paper later on, our foster carers step down because of age and ill health, as well as all sorts of other things. But the younger demographic of people often now can't afford to take it on as easily because they're finding it difficult to buy houses and all that kind of thing as well. And as you say, the bigger houses that they need are very expensive. So yes, I think we'll likely to have further questions about what transformation means. Just for my own purposes, though, I would like to, at some stage, look forward to receiving an organisational structure chart that reflects how the children's services are arranged. Right, thank you very much indeed for that very thorough discussion of the paper, and thank you very much both of you for preparing such a useful report. Thank you, Anita, and thank you, Tracy. So but do stay on, Tracy, if you'd like to comment on any of the other papers. So item, and we've been asked to note the contents of the report. So I think we've quizzed you on all sorts of bits as well. So item 7 on the agenda is the fostering annual report in 2020 for 2022-23. And I think that's being is that presented by you? Okay, thank you. So Anita, do carry on with the fostering annual report.
Thank you. So yes, the report represents the second full year of operations for...
Sorry, Anita, could you just move your microphone slightly closer so that when you're looking at me, it's, yeah, great.
Okay. I don't know if you heard that before, but yeah, this is the represents the second full year of operations for the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Fostering Service, which was launched on the 1st of December 2020. Obviously, I'm just going to pull out some key points from the report. I think it's fairly lengthy and hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to read it. I think, you know, this report very much follows on from the conversations that we've just had in terms of the national picture, and also how we're working together in terms with our foster carers. So in the period of last year, 2022-2023, the service recruited 11 new fostering households in Cambridgeshire. 22 fostering households resigned from fostering, giving an overall net loss of 11 households. On the 31st of March 2023, 51% of children in foster care were living in in-house fostering homes. And a big part of our fostering service is kinship care and connected persons assessments, so special guardian assessments. And we had 112 referrals to undertake assessments within that area for Cambridgeshire, and also 14 private fostering arrangements in terms of assessment. Obviously, we are a shared service across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. I'm just kind of highlighting the Cambridgeshire, but it is really important to understand that the services as a whole, in terms of the amount of outputs that we deliver each year. So what's working well in the service is that we have invested in a dedicated fostering resource team, and that has improved the sufficiency of the use of in-house carers, so increasing the number of fostered children living in the in-house foster carers' homes. We've done a lot of focused retention activity, which has led to the service seeing a reduction overall in resignations of foster carers. Although that seems quite a high number that I referred to earlier, that is a reduction when we look back on the previous year. The foster carer training offer and opportunities developed through our ambassador and mentoring schemes is a really, really good offer. And also looking about our family-centred outcomes and risk management of family time. So again, another part of our fostering service is not just about delivering fostering homes and households. We also have a wraparound service, what I would refer to as our family support services. And one of those is supervised contact, or as we refer to now, is family time when people are in proceedings or in post proceedings. Just like to highlight some priority actions, and that's to further develop our care arrangement offer to foster carers, including the adoption of a practice model and further development of an in-house clinical offer and placement stability interventions. We referred to that earlier in our conversations. Continue to improve and refine our fostering marketing and recruitment activity. To ensure that the child's voice is evident in all our practice alongside that of the carer, and to improve the critical analysis within our special guardianship assessments and writing child-centred support plans in consultation with our stakeholders. So a summary of our fostering households at the end of March 2023. In Cambridgeshire, we were supporting 169 fostering households, which when we break that down, that's 138 mainstream households, 9 link households, which provide short breaks for children with disabilities and complex health needs, 20 connected carer households, sometimes referred to as kinship care, and also 2 supported lodgings households. Taking us through in looking at some of the recruitment campaigns and the marketing campaigns that we've undertaken over the last year. We undertook 7 campaigns through April to March, looking at the LGBTQ+ week, foster care fortnight, Children at the Heart campaign, kinship care week, All Hearts Need a Home. And we've also looked at some of how the ambassadors support those campaigns. We don't do anything without them. From the very start, when we're planning a campaign, we work with our foster care ambassadors to look at, even the names of the campaigns. Would this appeal to you as the foster carer? As well as the campaigns that are planned with our comms team, we've also got our recruitment officers and our recruitment ambassadors that go out into the community, and also who undertake the information sessions, be they virtually, and we've also undertaken in-person ones, which we did always pre-pandemic. Everything was in person. But what COVID has proved to us actually that people prefer doing the virtual ones because we can do them at lunch times and we can do them in the evenings. But we have introduced an in-person one to test them out, just to see what people are thinking. When we look at some of our recruitment activity, sorry, my paper is gone over the edge. You can see some of the enquiries that we have actually reduced again over the last couple of years. We are going down in terms of the enquiries that we have received. The application forms that we received were pretty much the same as the previous year. and looking at the approvals that we also undertook last year with 11. The conversion rate for inquiry to application is 14.5, which is actually very good. I think when we've looked at some of our IFA people, and they would expect a 10% within that. So that is something that we are doing well at. There are always assessments that don't progress for various reasons, be that, you know, the applicant withdrawing, or we suggest that we withdraw for various reasons. When we're looking at the actual households that we have approved over last year, so there was 11 new fostering households who provided 12 beds. We also have what we call sibling beds. So that's around whether there's a bedroom that a sibling can share. So that also adds beds in terms of what our capacity and what our sufficiency that we have available. And we recruited 2 link carers, which I think is really important to highlight, because that is something that over the last few years we have found really difficult, and we are very much aiming at what I would call our professional carers, people that maybe have been a teaching assistant, been working in the health authority to ensure that they can meet the needs of the complex health needs of some of the children that we look after. So yes, we've had a number of resignations, 22 in Cambridgeshire. Again, that is a reduction in the previous year. But you are quite right to highlight that we have an ageing population, and looking at some of the reasons why people leave, you know, which I think is, again, really important to highlight. They're not leaving because they're not satisfied with the service that they are getting. They're leaving for family issues, ill health, or moving on, taking young people through shared lives, or staying put, or into adoption. So our occupancy rates, we acknowledge that they're not where we want them to be, in terms of we would, you know, very much like to meet our target of 60% of children living in in-house fostering households, but that currently we're not at target at that, you know, thinking about the number of new recruits that we have approved does impact upon that. I'm not going to go into the national picture. I think we've talked about that quite significantly, and also we've talked quite significantly about retention and some of the work that we are doing to support our carers. I think one of the highlights of last year is that we did host a conference called Cake and Chaos, which was we hosted that within Peterborough, although it was across the whole of the fostering service, which was got some very, very good feedback as well. Just highlighting that we did receive 2 complaints last year. As you can see, one was not upheld and one was partially upheld. We have, just again highlighting in terms of the fostering panel activity, which again is quite a significant activity within the service. We did host 27 fostering panels last year, because again that panel's not only looking at newly approved foster carers, it's about people's annual reviews, foster carers' annual reviews, but it's also about some of our kinship activity and our connected persons activity that we need to get regulation around as well. Private fostering is an area that we are actively working on and making sure that we are promoting that people are understanding what private fostering is. So currently in Cambridgeshire, Cambridgeshire assessed 14 private fostering arrangements. Of this figure, 5 were from language schools, which, as you know, we have got a significant amount of language schools in Cambridge. 5 were for Homes for Ukraine, and 4 were what we would call mainstream, in terms of young people and families making their own arrangements to live outside of their close family. Connected persons activity is significant for the service, and it's a growing part of our service, and obviously is a good outcome if it's appropriate and safe for children to remain in their families or in their supporting networks. Okay.
I think you'll find that's £10 to the chairman's charity. Anita, do you want to carry on?
Okay. Yeah, so that is a significant activity for the service, and it is an area that we will be looking at within the transformation to ensure that we have the resources to meet that need going forward.
Thank you, Anita. I'm going to wade in with some questions at the outset, if I may. Right. So I'm pleased to hear that 14.5% conversion rate from interest to foster carers is good. I wondered if that was about what you'd expect. So I'm glad to hear it's slightly better than the average. And around that, you mentioned yourself about an early intervention with family in order to support families. So it's like the family support service. To support families to better support the children who are proving problematic, where if that support wasn't given, those children would end up being taken away. And I just wondered whether you had any thoughts about, do we have sufficient of that family support service? I mean, or is it a case of, well, we could always do with more officers, and, you know, whether we have the right complement of that kind of officer? Do you want to answer that?
So I think in terms of our offer to support family time, I think any increase in care proceedings impacts upon that. But we do have a very robust system in Cambridgeshire. And we also have access to relief workers as well that can step in Cambridgeshire. We also, in fostering, host family group conferencing to support families to develop their own plans of how they can support the young person or the parent to support the child not coming into care. In terms of reunification, we also host that in fostering. We have got a reunification team, so supporting young people in care to return home. And that's been running for a number of years now, and it follows the NSPCC model, and is very successful.
So we do have officers intervening early with families who are in crisis.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to hear that. Okay. Right. I noticed that we're due to receive an ILAC inspection, and I wondered, does that include foster families as well? And are they prepared for that?
So yes, we would be expected to be included in any Ofsted inspection. So yeah, absolutely, we would. We've got a development plan as an in-house service to. It's not specifically to do with Ofsted, it's about our own development, but it supports the services that we understand that we need to make changes and we need to make improvements on. When we do have Ofsted inspections, we very much work alongside our fostering carers, and we identify carers that can be available, because obviously we do need to put foster carers forward. So that's very much obviously in conjunction with who's available, who wants to do it, and all the rest. And also they've had access to filling out the questionnaire, which I can't remember when that was. I don't know if you can, Tracy, that we emailed out a few months ago.
So I just wanted to sort of get a feel for whether our foster carers have any sense of nervous anticipation. I mean, natural that they would, but given what's happened in Ofsted recently, whether our staff and our foster carers are feeling nervous about an imminent inspection. That's really what I meant. Have they been prepared? Are they prepared for that inspection, in the sense of, have they got everything that they need to deal with that?
I would say that this is something that, you know, it is something that is kind of, it's always business as usual. It's always on the agenda. It's always a conversation. We're always very clear about who Ofsted is. They come in to inspect. Like I say, Ofsted sent us the questionnaire for foster carers specifically to complete. we are, you know, in terms of the support groups and in terms of the management groups that we have with foster carers, our newsletters, our communication strategy that we have, we send out regular information, and it's something that we could look at again in terms of the anticipation and send out some more communications.
So
we don't want people to be nervous.
No, exactly. I just wondered whether does an ILAC inspection involve, or indeed an Ofsted inspection involve going and visiting an unsuspecting foster care,
no,
or are they warned? Or
no, not unexpected.
So they are warned.
We would, yeah, absolutely. And we would normally have a group of foster carers that come together.
Yeah,
to speak to the Ofsted inspectors.
Okay, right. Thank you. The next thing I wanted to ask about was, so I registered on the recruitment activity. You know, it's an uphill struggle, isn't it? We always have to recruit more because there will always be people who leave. And I believe we are doing exit interviews, aren't we, with foster carers when they leave, so we know exactly why they're leaving.
Yes.
That's important. The other one I noted was, I'm absolutely sure it's the right placement, but in item on our page 36 of our agenda, the occupancy rates, the fact that the split is 51% in-house beds in Cambridgeshire, 58% in Peterborough, and that means that the remaining 49 of our Cambridgeshire beds are outside Cambridgeshire, and the fact that it would be so good. It was funny, I asked one of these, I was looking through the papers, and each time I sort of said, what one thing would make this better? And often it was just having more foster carers. And so the work of the recruitment ambassadors is so important, isn't it? And also to get people in as far as we can in Cambridgeshire, because that makes our logistics so much easier. Not having to take children to school elsewhere and back out would make life a lot easier. Yes. Oh, great. Okay, thank you. Also, can I just thank you for producing the report with a really balanced approach to the allegations against foster carers, the outcomes and timescales. Thank you for producing that in a more balanced way, I think, than it has been in previous years. I really appreciate that. And I particularly welcomed the analysis, and I'm absolutely sure that where we've got concern remained, there is action being taken on those to make sure that they're resolved. And also those partially upheld complaints, you know, I'm just hoping that a nod means that all of that is being dealt with. I'm really pleased that you're taking into account the fact that people find it easier to have meetings online, but the odd face-to-face is really useful for people to feel part of a community as well. So thank you for being flexible about that. And for my own purposes, rather related to the comment I made before, thank you for explaining the management arrangements on page 43, which is complex at the moment, is it not? And it is, we've had staff leaving, new staff coming in, and picking up into interim roles, and that I'm hoping that none of that is impacting on our foster carers. I don't mind if it impacts on me, but I hope it doesn't impact on our foster carers. I mean, could you just tell us how that's working out for you as an officer? I know in due course you'll be moving on too, but I just wondered if you could just tell us how that's impacting on the workforce.
Sorry, team manager and service manager within the service. So the service has always felt very stable, and I do believe that it doesn't impact the foster carers because we've got two levels of stability within the service. And we don't have significant amount of churn of social workers either. So that also supports, obviously we do have people leaving. So obviously, yes, there's been a change of head of service. I stepped into role in January, and Brian's been with us, is it 3 weeks, Brian? Yep. So yeah, there has been some changes, and changes across social care as well, which does impact upon the service. But it has, you know, it has felt very safe, and communication's been good in terms of who's coming in and who's doing what. So, you know, change can be difficult. It can also bring with it, you know, some very good ideas and enable us to be creative. So I believe that it's not significantly impacted upon us.
Thank you very much. The other item, which is my last of my points, is under the private fostering. And I had a big arrow up to the 14 assessed private fostering arrangements on the 31st of March. And of this figure, 5 were language schools. I have to admit, it hadn't occurred to me that language schools would be acting as private fostering arrangements. That's fine and good and wonderful if it's working well, and I'm very glad that we're assessing them. And also I'm glad that you're looking at the Homes for Ukraine as well, because that's really important that we support those children properly too. So thank you very much. Does anybody else have any further questions? Councillor Boulat?
Thank you, Chair. As a follow-up to that, because I also hadn't realized before about the impact of the language schools. So I was wondering if we have any assessment on how language schools impact on actually retaining in-house foster carers in general, especially in Cambridge City, but also like if there's any impact beyond people in the city on that. And I found it very useful on page, I think, 33 to see all the various marketing and communication strategies as well that have been tried. So I was wondering if we have any assessment on which ones have been more successful. Of course, I think the people who are recruiting within the communities, attending community events, it's a really good strategy. But I know there's a lot of social media activity. I've seen those big posters on some of the council buildings as well. And I was wondering if we keep a track of which strategies are actually leading to people expressing interest to become foster carers. And finally, I had a question around the comparisons with other local authorities. Of course, there's a net loss of fostering households both in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and perhaps this picture is similar in similar counties. But I was wondering if we have any assessment of how this net loss compares to neighboring authorities, or statistically significant, I guess, comparative neighbors. Thank you.
And Councillor, just to clarify my understanding of your question, when you were asking about the language schools and what did you mean about the impact on foster carers? I wasn't quite sure what we were asking the officers to look at.
I mean, whether those who under the private fostering agreements, whether they would have been persuaded to stay in the service. But I think the question is wider as well, because actually on language schools in general, quite a few people in Cambridge City are thinking about providing support with those when perhaps they could have been persuaded to be in the fostering service. And I think, it's also like something we imagine as being something that's like in the summer, but actually they're all year round, and actually a lot of people are involved all year round in those language schools. So
just to plumb the depths of my ignorance then, I understand this to mean that children are coming over to learn English into a residential school, and the staff and adults in those residential schools are, no, I've got it wrong. Do you want to explain?
So they live with host families. Yeah, and that it does impact upon fostering in Cambridge City, because they pay fairly generously in terms of £250 plus a week. The children are not within the house very often. They're structured, organised activities going on. So they're out most of the day. So it's basically bed and breakfast. So yes, if you have a spare bedroom, we are in competition with language schools. And what I would say is that pre-pandemic, we probably would have had 100 children within classes private fostering. A lot of the language schools decided to slightly diversify after COVID. Some of them this year are only getting up to speed in terms of what courses they're offering over the summer. So we are expecting growth in that area going forward, but it does significantly impact in our recruitment of foster
So the
carers.
point is, these are the host families.
Yeah.
And the other thing that concerns me about that is that the host families might be are often, sometimes in Cambridge, but they're often satellite villages around the city where they can easily get into the city. I know this happens in my own village, and coaches pick up the children to take them into school. But yes, so the point you're making is these people, you know, could they have been considered? Would they have considered fostering in a more general way? Okay. So that might be a route to actually contact more recruitable people, would it not?
We do consider that, and we also consider, so the people who put them forward for like homes for Ukrainian young people and adults, they're managed through the districts in terms of where they go, but we're working with them because if there's not been a match, again, they may well be people that would consider fostering.
Thank you. Useful question. Thank you. So, Slaughter, did you have anything to ask?
My actual question I was thinking I'd need to ask, I found in the report, and that was numbers of people we've lost, and the numbers who've gone to an agency. And it was only one, I think, and maybe another one since this report was written, which is much less than I'd feared. What I'd like to see is a figure of getting them back. You know, can we have a sort of bounty? Is this public? Yes, it is. You know, offered, special offer. You know, if you could get them back. No, seriously. I mean,
do you mean
it's a win-win then?
Sorry, do you mean encouraging back people who've left?
No, it's the people who are in an agency. Sometimes they've come from us and they're in the agency, or even if they haven't been to us first, to actually show them what we have that added value, which I know Tracy's told us about, to sell that idea to agency foster carers, because
I
then
think you might
presumably
find
save
that
that
independent fostering agencies wouldn't take too kindly to our marketing material. But Anita, would you like to respond to that?
We are marketing ourselves, the reasons why you would want to foster for the local authority rather than an independent agency. Tracy would be a very good advocate in terms of that, in terms of her own experiences. It's quite interesting, we've had communication from quite a few foster carers who are currently registered with independent fostering agencies wanting to come over to the local authority. So yeah, we're very open, but like I say, we have taken a much stronger stance in terms of our marketing about why you should come to us and not an independent fostering agency.
Okay, thank you very much. Coming back to Councillor Boulat's questions, Councillor Boulat asked about, have you got any way of checking which of your marketing strategies is the most successful?
Yeah, so we've got a communication manager called Tony Donnell. I think he has been to committee at some point before. Yeah, so very much we review all of our campaigns that we've undertaken. We ask questions. We've got, I think, 3 feedback loops in terms of inquiry to application stage. So finding out exactly why people have contacted us, inquired, or why people have gone through to application. We link it back to the campaigns, always on all inquiries. So very much so. We also link in with external companies in terms of who suggest who we should be targeting and how we should be targeting, a marketing system called Acorn. So yeah, very much so. And we also produce a communication strategy and an annual report as well.
Thank you. Was that all your questions answered? Was there one?
I mean, the final one was just more of a point in that it would be interesting to have a comparison with the neighboring authorities in terms of like how the, I guess, net losses and the aging population of foster carers is comparable across the different counties?
So I can't give you the exact figures, but anecdotally, I can tell you that all the local authorities around are experiencing similar situations to us. I would suggest that we are probably impacted more than some of our other local authorities. Maybe that's our demographics in terms of Cambridgeshire, talk a little bit about previously, also fairly transient in some of our populations in the city, thinking about the science industries coming in and out, the universities coming in and out as well. But, you know, some of the other local authorities are reporting a net loss this year for the first time.
Okay, so did you want to make any comment? No. So Brian, did you want to make any?
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, we've got to develop, as we've said, a range of marketing strategies. We do need to up our game in terms of the quality that we do and kind of like how we do that. But I would stress that one of the consistent findings, which I'm sure Anita and Tracy will agree, is the consistent finding from research is one of the most powerful marketing tools is the recommendation of our own foster carers. By far and above, if our foster carers recommend the service, people are more likely to want to join us. So again, it's about looking at how we invest in our foster carers, what kind of activities we put on, what things we can do to kind of get that showcased more and get people out there. So that's key. And again, I kind of come back to the fact that, you know, the demographic, and this will all be part of the transformation report, because we'll have to look at how do we do in comparison to IFAs, how do we do regionally in comparison to other areas, and then simply issues like housing costs, where you can get a 3-bedroom house, all that kind of stuff, all has an impact. And on one, I'm a neutral officer as a council, I would just simply say to councillors, if you're looking at an interesting model for how it's done in 2 different other jurisdictions, is if you look at the Welsh local authority, Welsh Senate government views, and you look at the Scottish government views, both of whom have adopted a not-for-profit approach, and that's written into their government aims, and that has meant that in those 2 jurisdictions, they're in open conflict, well, open competition with the commercial agencies. They've said what we want to do is remove profit from care. So that's been in Welsh.
Profit for who? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, profit for whom?
Yes, removing profit from the sale of placements, basically. So it's a non-profit agenda in both Wales and Scotland.
Sorry, does that mean that the costs, which remain the same whether you're in Scotland or Wales or England, are reimbursed to the carers, but sorry, I'm not quite sure. Nobody's profiting anyway. I don't understand the profit.
Oh, no, actually people are making considerable profit.
That tends to be in care home provision, does it not?
No, IFAs also make profit. So basically in the Welsh and Scottish provisions, they've deliberately taken a not-for-profit approach, which is saying they won't actually contract with profit-making agencies, and you have to be a non-profit agency.
Okay, won't contract with profit-making. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, the industry does make profit. There are agencies out there who profit through their shareholders, and they pass on their profit on. But it's meant that in practice, the local authorities in Scotland and Wales have adopted more aggressive marketing strategies towards removing care from the IFA industry. So they're not. An example, if you wish to have a look at that, that's it.
Righto. Well, thank you very much indeed. I think we've had a really thorough round the houses with that. So we have been invited to note the content of the report and raise any questions with lead officers. So thank you very much. I think we've done that. Thank you very much indeed, Anita. So item 8 is the performance scorecard, and Michaela Berry is going to, who is the acting head of service for corporate parenting, will briefly introduce the report. Thank you, Michaela. Give you a moment to sit down.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, here today to take any questions on the scorecard that's been distributed to everybody.
Thank you very much, Michaela. Right, I'll kick off with this is just it might just be to do with the formatting, but on our page 48 of the report, in the section on staffing under independent reviewing officers, we've got some blanks.
Yes.
And I think that's, I mean, do we know the numbers for that?
We do, yeah. Apologies for that. They came to me later than I had time to put them in. But so there are currently full-time equivalent 9.6 independent reviewing officers.
9.6.
Yeah, with an average caseload of 64, which is within the recommended guidelines of between 50 and 70.
That's great. Thank you very much. Right, the other things I wanted to raise were, yes, this is where my question came up. So under adoption on the second page, the timeliness of the adoption process, our target is below 183 days, and we're currently on time to match is 313. And our target is below 183, and our target to place is 400 days, so slightly over a year. We're the time to placement is 568 days. So my question was, what single thing would enable this to improve?
I think, and Brian may want to come in here as well, because I know he works closely with Joe Banks and
Ask both of you to put your microphones a bit closer. I'm conscious
Certainly.
otherwise it's not
Sorry.
us in the room, it's
Yes.
people who are listening online who won't be able.
Absolutely. And Brian may want to come in here as well, because I know he works very closely with Joe Banks, head of the Regional Adoption Agency. I think these figures are around the fact that we keep pursuing adoption for children who are have sort of quite complex needs, and we kind of don't give up easily. So for some children, it does take a really long time to find the right family for them. And I think we're not kind of beholden to these government targets if it's the right thing to do for children. So I think that does explain that target. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you want to add to that, Brian?
Yeah, it's basically one of the standard anomalies of this particular way of measuring things. So if you imagine you take the length of time it takes all children to get adopted, but if you've actually sort of done a good thing, which you've got an 8-year-old who's been adopted, that then skews your figures in this high number. So you only need one child who you've got to be adopted much later, and all of a sudden your scorecard looks like it's completely out of control. Whereas actually this one's not too bad, but on the whole, we are, as it sort of says there, we're around 313 days to move towards adoption, which is the average kind of figure. So, and actually we've been very successful in the number of children who get adopted within the authority, which is great. So there's a kind of it's a very, on the whole, it's a positive picture. Clearly, like anybody, I would always say we can do better. We always want to kind of get children moving on. And we're looking very much about what thing called early permanency, which is where a foster carer, you're a proven adopter as a foster carer before a child is adopted. So that way they can move, it limits the amount of moves they have to have. So they can go straight to the carer as a foster carer and then be subsequently adopted if that's the right thing to happen.
Thank you. And the other question I had was on care leavers who have a pathway plan in place, because again, at the 12th of June Care Leavers Summit, we were looking at the really close links between the educational establishment. And one of the things that was pointed out there was often for children who've had very troubled and changed placements, obviously what we try to do is keep them in the same school, which is a good thing. And that sometimes means that actually the staff in the school and their dedicated person in the school might be the person, not always, but might be the person who they've had most continuity with. Sometimes it's other people, but the school, the college recognises what an important role, what a responsibility they have as well, because they very often have seen a child through its education. And sometimes when they've been in different foster placements, they have stayed at the same school. And so they recognise their responsibility in that regard, and which is really important. But what I'm slightly concerned about is that since October, this has dropped from 90% who've got a pathway plan in place down to 83. And I just wanted to check, is that a cyclical thing through the year, or is that, in other words, is it always high in November, December, and always does it get worse as the season goes on? Can you explain?
I don't actually know the answer to that question, unfortunately, but I can absolutely find out. I think you would have met Louisa Kay at the Care Leaver Summit, who has joined us recently, very experienced service manager, been in a couple of other local authorities for leaving care, and is absolutely committed, along with Ollie, who's yes, absolutely. And they've kind of really revamped all the placement plan material, and kind of reinvigorated all the staff about what a good pathway plan looks like. So I do think that at times the renewal of the pathway plans is every 6 months, and I think they do bunch up, so it can lead to a bit of our workers feeling a bit overwhelmed because they've got a lot to update at the same time, and perhaps we need to help them stagger those a bit better, so they get out of that rut that comes around every 6 months. I think this figure is something that the service are tracking weekly at the moment, and supporting our personal advisors to kind of update plans that are out of date. We do have personal advisors with higher than we would like caseloads currently. They've got about 32 young people, which I think is the reason for this figure at the moment. We recognise that's too many, and there are plans afoot, hopefully, to increase the size of that team so we can reduce those numbers.
Thank you, Michaela. And don't worry, I hadn't forgotten Ollie's report, which in which it identifies how important the IROs are as a stable figure in children's lives. Does anybody else have any questions on the scorecard? Councillor Slatter? No? Okay, righto. You have any questions? Right, okay, thank you very much. So we've noted and asked questions on that. And can I just say, when we first, way back, when we first said, can we have a little bit of everything on our scorecard? I don't think anybody realised how useful this would be. It's been a really useful tracker. So thank you very much for, I appreciate it might take quite a lot of complicated stuff in the background, but we find it really useful. So thank you. So coming to item 9, we've got the Independent Reviewing Officer Annual Report for 2022-23, and Ollie Grant, the Service Manager for Independent Reviewing Officers, is going to join us and introduce the report. So thank you, Ollie. Nice to see you again.
Hello, thank you.
You can lift it up a bit as well. Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ollie.
So yes, I'm here to present the annual IRO report and take any questions on its content. As you know, it's a statutory report that is presented at the end of every year with an overview of our services performance and our observations of the practices and performance of the operational service. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Ollie. Right. So thank you very much for the format of the report. It's very clear, very straightforward. And I really found the impact of your service, the case histories, is so useful to have anonymized example. It's really, it gives us an insight that we wouldn't have otherwise. Sometimes sometimes data is data, whereas this is real stories. And I appreciate you taking the trouble to do that, because I appreciate it can't be easy to anonymize it in the way you have, but thank you very much. And also to, well done, because as you've said, at 8.0 and 8.1, the feedback on the Independent Reviewing Officer service is overwhelmingly positive. And obviously that means that you're supporting not only the children, young people, but the foster carers and all the people around them who support them. And I think that's really very, very important and much valued. I also wanted to point out that in theory, not only do all the IROs carry a copy of the promise, but so do we. Here we are, I have my copy here. And every now and again, I just think we need to remind ourselves that we have yes, thank you, we have a promise to our children in care. And those of us who sit on this committee, I hope we have the confidence to show our other colleagues in other committees, in all the other committees, what promises we make as corporate parents to our children in care and young people, and our ongoing responsibilities. Let me just find. So I think that's all I had to say, but did anybody else have any questions? No, doesn't look like it. So I think looks like we're very happy with what you're doing. Thank you so much for coming along.
No problem.
And really, thank you so much because I appreciate the workload is considerable. It's a lot of children to keep your eyes on and a lot of social workers that you're observing. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. It helps in my service, as you know, that the stability of the staff team is good. Generally, I've appointed some new staff earlier this year, but many of my staff have known children for a really, really long time. One of them's been in the service over 18 years, so has seen children all the way through childhood, some of them. And that has really supported not only the IROs to remain stable, but it also, I think, has supported the service to be, a kind of figure of continuity in the background. So I hope that comes across in the report.
And what I appreciate is that almost certainly every time there is a problem or an incident or a concern, it's a learning curve for everybody, regardless of how long you've been in the service. Every person and young person and child is a different person and will have a different suite of complexities to deal with. So we really value your experience and thank you so much for what you do. So thank you very much indeed, Ollie. Thank you. Right, so that moves us on to item 10. Sorry, just before we go. Item 9, we were asked to probably note and raise any questions, which we have done on the Independent Reviewing Officer annual report. So item 10 brings us to the subcommittee's workshop and training plan. And I'll ask Brian Ralph, our Interim Service Director for Fostering. This is a snappy name, isn't it? Fostering, Regional Adoption and Specialist Young People Services. If there's anything you'd like to draw to our attention on this, thank you.
I think it's sort of fairly straightforward. This for members, we've put a standard training plan going forward. If anybody's got any questions on it, very happy to answer.
I think the only thing I'd like to say is we're all quite busy and some of us serve on different councils as well. So if ever there's an opportunity to run a particular set of training at more than one time of day of the week, that sort of thing, it's always helpful. And I know I was really sorry to miss the trauma-induced workshop, trauma-induced training, wasn't it? Awareness, yes. So I would really like to do that because I didn't have a chance to do it before, but if we can do another one of those, that would be great. I think it was.
We actually run quite a few right across the department, so I can keep an eye out if there's anything that you could be invited to attend. Okay, yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Any other questions for Brian on this training plan? Okay. So we'll take that as noted then. And then the last item on our agenda is the subcommittee's agenda plan on page 79. I will note it's a bit empty at the moment, and I would like to work towards making sure we call to our agenda things that we feel would be useful, and also things that we need to feed into the Children and Young People's Committee, which the purpose is for us to help the officers to improve their reports with regard to aspects to do with children in our care, so that then when they come to Children and Young People's, they're an even better paper. So does anybody have any comments to make on that? Councillor Sutter?
It's a half-baked idea. I apologise, Chair. The issue of housing is often coming up, and it would be good
Do you mean housing for children or housing for foster carers?
Well, the two together, really.
Okay.
When housing prevents people from becoming foster carers because their house is too small, or they have their own children after all, but would like to carry on but can't. So it would really be a matter of even just a brainstorming session, because very often these meetings, as you know, Chair, are discussions more than anything. And if it was possible to see, is it possible to do this, that, or the other? I would love to have an S106 clause that one could draw down for a particular sort of housing to be available as part of a new development. You know, we talk about affordable housing. It would be good to have what the developer's providing, a family home that could be used for, at the local authorities' discretion. That sort of thing may well have been looked into elsewhere. We can obviously learn from the other nations of the United Kingdom. And just to see if there are ways, if we as a county have any power. We obviously don't have our own housing, but maybe we can start discussing with our district colleagues. And just the thought if that was possible.
Just from my own experience of South Cambs District Council, whenever we have new developments planned, one of the early discussions in the consideration of what's called the Section 106 heads of terms is the provision of affordable housing. And within that, the housing officers determine in negotiation with the developer what proportion of homes of what size are required. So that would come to district councils and indeed the city council in Cambridge. And they would be negotiating with the developers what proportion of housing is needed. But it's interesting to point out that some of that might need to be for foster carers.
Is it more a matter of extra bedrooms than the norm? Sometimes
What
a
I'm
family
saying-
will get around that by buying two, but if it is a matter of making sure there are some larger homes,
Yes.
and if there is a way of tying them in to this sort of social provision, it may not be. It may be a non-starter, but I don't know whether
That's what
that
I'm saying.
specifically it's never come through when I was being on planning as an idea that one could somehow tweak the system. So,
Sorry, what I was saying is that in my experience at South Cambs, some of the affordable housing provision is 5 bedrooms because we recognise there is a need. So certainly I think that is that the number of the fact that affordable housing is needed right down from 1-bedroom apartments right up to 5-bedroom houses is recognised. But certainly we can raise that within our own councils. Okay, thank you very much. Good suggestion. Can we do some kind of action point on that so that we look at it? Thank you. Thank you very much, Rachanda. So that concludes today's business at 22:06. So we next meet on Wednesday, the 15th of November here at Newshire Hall, and I declare the meeting closed. Could you take us offline? Thank you.